Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or meant to target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle or demean the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com. You can also send a direct message to me on Instagram at Mr. Clark After Dark. Hope you enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. And now, on to the show. Hope you all enjoy. Hello again, friends, and welcome back to part 2 of the episode with Thomas Wickens. On part 2 of the episode, Wickens is a physics and chem teacher, but on part 2 here we discuss inflatable penguins, if humanities and science teachers should earn the same wage, his initial start as a secondary science teacher, going back into his first full year back in the profession, and then going right into COVID. Going into then how he recovered from COVID, staying in the classroom in the age of teacher shortages, and knowing that essentially he is someone with a degree, has worked in the oil sands. So essentially just wondering what keeps him in the profession, what about the classroom makes him stay, dealing with productivity hangovers, finding quality professional development, trying not to be the teachers we didn't like as students and what it means to be too chill, the difference between your home self and your teacher self, and if he would ever go into administration. And then he actually turns the tables on me towards the end and asks me a series of questions about how my first and second year went. Hope you all enjoy the show. Thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you next time. This is kind of like a little bit of more of a controversial thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And so you come into the school. You teach grade 7 and 8 English. You go in to teach. What's the first thing that you teach in high school when you get there? Like when the high school opens, I guess you're here opening day, right?
I'm the science teacher. My day,
because there's only 30 kids here or something in the grade 12 class.
In grade 12, but I taught my first semester. So like it'd have been 2018. So 2019 when the high school opened. Mm-hmm. And so then the second semester was like pandemic.
Yes.
So first semester I was teaching, because we only had 32 grade 12s, but I was teaching. My day was, I think, chem 20, bio 20, physics 20, and then science 20.
Oh, so you were mostly essentially grade 11.
Yeah,
still.
All grade 11s.
Okay.
And some grade 11s spent 3/4 of the day with me. They had like chem, bio, and physics. Sciences? I had like 4 or 5 of them that got to spend like the entire day with me. And I was like, I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to spend the entire day with me.
But you know what? That's a lot to, like, if even right now, I know some people who will teach like maybe both sciences or even both social and English, and you'll have either -1 or -2 stream, and you'll spend both. Anyway, my question is, do you think, or maybe not even do you think, just generally speaking, should science and math teachers make more than English and social teachers?
No.
No? Why not?
You have to mark essays.
Okay, so it's more of a time thing. Because I almost find, from my perspective, I guess I maybe fall into the trap a little bit of like English and social are more of the softer skills. And I almost find math and science was so much more difficult for me and so much more intimidating. So maybe I kind of subconsciously value it a little bit more. But what do you think?
So we're part of a union, so we all make the same.
Yeah, but like just say hypothetically, like no union exists. Do you think the skill, because it is technically of like higher economic value, or what do you think? Do you think that's true? Do you think they both translate well together, or what do you think? I don't have like a set place I'm trying to go with this question, because it's just kind of like a thought experiment a little bit, because I've thought about it a few times before.
Yeah. I guess it goes back to the fact that like I like science.
Yes. So it's like, not, doesn't feel as...
You couldn't, if you paid me more, I don't want to teach high school social. So,
okay, that makes sense.
Probably if I paid you more, you probably still wouldn't really want to teach.
Yeah, I could maybe do like a bio 20, maybe, but bio is a bit more my lane. But
you just like wouldn't have a lot of interest in it.
No,
right?
That's fair.
So Yeah, and that's, I guess, one thing too. Like when I came from my last career, I made a lot more money than I make now. Yeah. Like not a lot, but like enough.
So how long have you been back in the classroom now? So obviously you've come in high school, pandemic for 2 years essentially. Yeah. So it's almost as if you're kind of really only in year 3 of like normal years.
I would say like last year is like restarting basically.
Yeah. So what do you mean by restarting? What was that kind of experience like going right into COVID in your first year to essentially going through COVID?
Awful.
Yeah.
Everybody.
So was there ever a thought in your mind of, should I go back to Nalco?
No.
No? Why not?
I've had it a couple times, I guess. Like, should I go back to Nalco?
Yeah.
But it's always
or not even just Nalco, but that field
should I
in
leave
general.
Education?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think everyone thinks about it. Like after you have a bad day, like, did I make the right choice?
But you know what? That's what I find, not to like gas you up or anything, but what kind of intrigues me about you is that most teachers, if given the option for the same, if they had the same pay or even probably 10 to 20% less, would leave teaching. And essentially, it's so much more difficult to find math and science teachers to fill some of these positions. So I guess, like, what keeps you in the classroom?
Like,
is it schedule? Is it relationships? Is it staff that you work with? I know, obviously, other than me, but like, what do you? So, like, what is it that keeps you there?
So we have a good staff here. It's not the staff though. Like,
unless he hates everyone.
Unless you make it like you can make. We have a really good staff. Like I like the people we work with. We just don't see them that often.
No, I mean when you have 70 teachers in the school, it's literally almost impossible to see everyone all the time. Yeah. But
it definitely comes down. I think like again having like so many different jobs and stuff in my adult life. Mm-hmm. I know I need to be around people.
Okay, so why?
Just for mental health, like
like
struggled with depression like all through my teens and like early 20s. Kind of got over that, realized like if I start to get depressed, like things that I can do to not be depressed. And I know being by myself for long periods of time is not good for my mental health.
I 100% agree. So essentially, whenever I hear someone, they're like, oh, I want to go be an operator out at site, make it easy bank, driving a truck. And like people in my family, essentially, I'm the only person in my family to actually go to university. That's not trying to be a weird flex, but like essentially everyone else here is an operator out at site in some capacity or works out there. And they say just driving in the loops, it's just so toxic for like the rabbit holes you can go down and kind of catch yourself in. Because I find even when school will end, like for example, at the end of school last year, I love the buzz of the school. I love it when we have just people going all the time everywhere. I almost find my bigger classes are more entertaining. I find when I have the 30, 35, it obviously makes marking a lot more terrible. Like there's no easy way around it. It's just so time consuming. It's so monotonous. By the time you read essay 36 in your same class, you're just ready to put rusty nails into your eyeballs. I can't remember where I was going. Where was I going with that?
Oh, just being with people while you
being with people. I find when school ended, especially this year, like I only had a week off before I started summer school. But during that week, it's almost like I don't know if it's I say productivity hangover. Like when you are just so busy all the time, go, and all of a sudden it's like a wall that stops and your year ends. I get sucked. Like I was not prepared for essentially the low that I hit. Now it wasn't that I got into like a deep and dark depression, but it was almost like, what is my purpose if I'm not around people? Not that I even know if I'm actually providing anyone anything, but it's that was kind of so I can totally relate to that needing to be around people aspect.
So yeah, there are, I think, while you were talking, I was like, yeah, the operator, the site, like being an analytical chemist or something, you're spending a lot of time by yourself. Couldn't do that. Have like thought like on those days where you're like, was teaching the right decision? I'm like, well, what would I do otherwise? And it would just involve like a big life change, like going back to school. Like,
and honestly, that's usually the barrier for most teachers who would eventually want to leave is needing to go back to school to do something else, but where you're not in that position. So like, what are some of your favorite kind of classroom or school memories that you kind of have, that kind of what are the things you think of essentially when you say, no, this is why I want to stay in the classroom, because like this happened, etc. Do you have anything jump out, like former stories, kids, anything like that?
Zero. No, I'm just kidding.
He secretly hates it here. He hates talking to me.
My letter of resignation will be in the mail. No. Thanks, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I ended his career today, but
no, it's those like, as you build your like experience and you can start doing be comfortable doing more activities that are like engaging. Like
makes it lighter.
Yeah. You see the kids have fun. Like in my physics 20 class, we build catapults out of mouse traps.
Oh, cool.
It's like, and it's like the report they have to write is a grind, but they like really enjoy it. To me, it's like they're doing the process of science.
Yeah. And learning to enjoy it, and seeing how it can be fun,
how it can be fun. And then, just like incorporating that. Or student comes in and asks you like a really good question. Like if they ask you a question you don't know the answer to, like
you're doing something right.
You're doing something right, because they're interested. They've gotten beyond what the curriculum is. Those discussions.
Well, they're being
really
critical
good.
about like what comes next, kind of thing. Yeah.
And just like even the curriculum, like trying to go through, like we're finishing up review now, and like lots of classes like chemistry 20, like you're reviewing science 10, and they might have done science 10 like a year ago, and chemistry is usually at the start of science 10. So fair enough if they forgot the review, but you're kind of like reteaching them, and like that, like they can't balance equations, and then all of a sudden they can balance equations. Like that, like little success is like the dopamine hit is a dopamine hit. Right?
I almost find that that's probably a more common occurrence in math and science.
Yeah.
Is seeing the light bulbs click. Because I almost find like in social, I love it. I could talk social all day. I tell my students all the time, I'm like, you guys are going to hate it. I have to talk for 6 hours tomorrow because it's a content day. We got to move through some stuff. I hate framing as if it is something that we have to get through, because it's like, no, we're going to have fun. We're going to have some good discussion. We'll do some stuff.
Downside of the curriculum is you have to get through it.
You have to get through it. So I try to like not frame it in that way, but I can literally tell students about cannibalism in orphanages in the Soviet Union during the Stalin period, and they're yawning. And I'm just like, I don't know what more you want from me in terms of like the absolute gruesome, interest spiking things that we can talk about. Now, sometimes I can get them to kind of reflect on themselves and that huge in relation to the content. So I find that does help. But I do find in social, because again, most people don't like history or they wouldn't be that interested in it. So I almost find trying to find those light bulb moments are almost even harder to find versus physics, where it's they don't understand and then in one conversation then they get it. You know what I mean? I almost find that's more yeah. So I guess shifting gears a little bit here. I'm just wondering, as I was growing up, because one of the reasons why I wanted to be a teacher, I didn't really think I wanted to be one until I was in grade 12. But my dad had cancer in high school. I had a pretty rough time. Obviously, like you just said, having some depression in your late teens. I was very much same boat. I had some teachers that helped me along that definitely encouraged me to get into it. But I guess my question would be, what were some of the characteristics of teachers that you didn't like that you now try to avoid doing? Like, what were the things that teachers you did not click with because they were just A, B, or C? But what do you think?
So I guess a couple big things. So like teachers who didn't hand back work quickly. That's like a big thing I try to, like labs might take a little longer, but like tests and quizzes, I try to get back right away. I had a teacher who we had like one test and didn't get it back and had another test that was like directly built on that test. So like made the exact same mistakes. So like that's one thing.
So a teacher that makes the same mistakes over and over?
Or just no, that doesn't give you a chance to fix your mistakes
before
they assess you again.
Oh, okay. Right? That makes sense. Yeah.
If you don't know how to like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but if you have like one test and there's like, you don't know how to multiply, or you don't know how to divide the long way, and then you don't get that test back.
And then they assess you again on the same.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So I think it's like important to like be, and especially now kids with like want immediate feedback.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to like for like labs and stuff to not give it back right away because they need to learn patience because we have lives too.
There's also something to be said about the separation from the assignment for a little bit, because I can understand like it's not gratification, but the role that immediate feedback plays in like the initial like learning thinking process, I guess. But yeah, I can see that. But what else do you think?
Having a teacher who's, I'm trying to think. Most of like, honestly, part of the reason I'm like I like science is because most of my like science and math teachers were excellent.
Okay.
And I would say lots of my LA teachers, we didn't have social studies in Ontario, but like lots of like,
because it's a bit more like fragmented.
Yeah.
Right.
We have like a geography and then a history and then civics and careers, but like those teachers I think had qualities that I didn't jive with as much.
So you didn't like the humanities teachers?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was because I'm like not as into humanities. Like I enjoy social studies. I like learning about history.
Yeah. Do you find because this was my experience, like studying. So my BA would have been history and political science at University of Calgary, and I almost found it was like the big name, quote unquote, university. I found in the arts specifically, there was so much ego in, like, whenever we would have classroom discussions, there was almost people trying to show how smart they were in a sense. Now, maybe that was like my own insecurity kind of feeding into that. Maybe I was reading into it a little bit too much.
You definitely weren't.
Pardon?
There definitely weren't. I think that's at you mean profs or other students?
Just other students.
Yeah. 100%.
And like in general. And I almost found that's exactly what I don't want to be. Like that was kind of my main thing, as if what do you think about that? Do you have like a similar thing in science? Do you think that was kind of like, did you find that with your humanities teachers when you were kind of growing up? Was it kind of more of like an ego thing there, or just a lack of interest?
A lack of interest, or like I still remember like my grade 12, we had to write a final essay, and I was never strong in English. My comments on my essay were like, you provided really good ideas and insight, but not like enough evidence.
It's just very vague stuff,
I guess. I don't know. I was in grade like 11. And
but I guess I almost find, because part of my qualm with marking is that sometimes giving too precise of feedback always comes back with, I don't know what you mean by this. So it's like, why did I spend 15 minutes looking at your paper to give you feedback that I have to give to you verbally anyways? I've kind of reverted to a bit more of a verbal stance in that way, but yeah.
So grade 12 final essay comes around, and I was like, well, I have good grades, but like my English mark is probably like 75 to 78. So like that could be higher. That's going to like help me do what I want to do. So I was like, and I didn't actually, I liked my grade 12 English teacher. So I was like, can you help me like with this issue that I've had my entire high school career, because it's going to maybe hold me back from doing what I want to do. Yeah. I didn't probably say it that eloquently, but like I asked for extra help. So I would go in at lunch, get some feedback on what I wrote, and handed in my essay and got it back, and it was a 75. And I was like, this is bullshit. Because you basically just gave yourself a 75. Like I did everything you told me to do. And maybe in like hindsight, that's the reason I got a 75, is because I needed help. But they never wrote anything for me. They just said, you need to go back and like provide more quotes. Or like,
because it is like a repetition thing. I think like a practice thing I find with writing specifically, but yeah.
So I don't know. I definitely try to channel things from like good teachers. I've had bad teachers in university too. So I guess like I'm super transparent with my students because I had like.
So what do you mean by transparent?
Like I tell them what, like, okay, you're going to you get these resources or you don't get these resources, or I just try to keep them in the loop about everything that I can, because they're almost adults. So and like I'm teaching grade 11 and 12, so they should be invested in their education. And I like when people are transparent with me. So yeah, I had a teacher in university where never told us but go into a inorganic chemistry midterm and we didn't get periodic tables. It's like, you guys should have this memorized. I was like, what?
Okay, like unrealistic expectations kind of thing.
But. Yeah, or like set the expectation and tone.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely try to focus. Like there's teachers that stand out to me as really good teachers and I remember them better. So like had a teacher who made things really fun. Like lots of like humor in the classroom. I just really enjoyed going to that class. It was chemistry.
Yeah.
But he made a lot of the boring stuff fun.
Okay.
So that was one of the things I was like, well, like learning is a lot, even if it's boring. Yeah. Like if you can make it fun, it's going to be better. And then on the flip side, my grade 11 teacher was this like soft-spoken, super serious, like guy who was a nice guy, but it was like all an act.
Okay.
Which I can't do. But I've definitely tried to take some of that like seriousness.
Incorporate it your own way.
And incorporate it in my own way. Because I thought it was like valuable when getting some feedback. Because it like with the right person, like having that like tone and like questioning can like really help. But yeah, found out like a couple years after like high school, like saw him out in the real world and I was like, you're not the same person who taught me. Like
I know, I feel, because something I've noticed, again, I always feel like I'm still that same idiot high school kid who just like whatever. But it's like, how different is your home self from your teacher self? So I feel like I'm the exact same person. For the most part, almost probably too much. Yeah, the exact same person, but just like 10% more professional.
Yeah, probably the same. And like, yeah.
Well, no, because I'll even teachers that I'll meet, because like I'll hear the way, again, like whenever there's a conversation about a teacher in my classroom, I'll shut it down. Like okay, no, like we're not going to talk negatively, but it's almost it's insane sometimes the perception that students can have of a certain teacher. And obviously a lot of this will depend on the way that student behaves in that classroom, interests, etc. But then I'm like, oh, that teacher's great. Like they're a great person. Like I literally talk to them all the time, whatever. But maybe there are some teachers who do have a bit more of a different like work versus home or even personable self that like, oh, after high school, I'll talk to you differently, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I almost find that's too exhausting.
It is. It's hard to not be yourself. Like, yeah.
And I almost find, again, I'm a pretty well, that's the thing. I almost find when I do go into whatever like my lecture mode is, I kind of channel that seriousness. Like I try to be as effective of a speaker as I can, but then it's not like I completely change where I'll still try to like I'll be like, oh, that Hitler, he's a rascal. Like, you know what I mean? I'll try to do some things to try to toss some humor in there and try and keep it myself and
throw a curve. If you throw a curveball.
Yeah, like I'll say the most like random stuff.
It definitely like the kids are like, wait, what? If they started to fade off, it like brings their attention back, right? If you say something they don't expect.
Yes. But so do you ever see, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years in terms of like, now that you've been teaching for a few years, because I feel like you're someone I see as like you love your subject, you love teaching. Would you ever see yourself like going into admin or doing a master's in education or something like that route?
Like, not right now. I know some of the admin a couple of years ago asked me about it. Okay. I think I have qualities that I like would make. I just couldn't do it full time. I would want to teach like half time or something.
So what are some qualities? Like, what do you think? Like, what are the qualities of good leadership in your experience?
Like the ability to be patient, the ability to listen, ability to like make decisions. I
find the big one is not making you feel stupid for asking a question. I think that's and one thing I do get here, not like I find just the admin that I've dealt with in overall, like whenever it's always, if you belittle me for asking a question, well, then I'm not going to come to you anymore. You know what I mean? So then things are going to start to happen kind of under your leadership that you're not going to see anymore because they're going to find a way to get around it. Right? Did you agree with that? Like, do you?
Yeah.
Not that I've had that experience here at all, but that's kind of the
always like open to like answering questions. Also, like they're super transparent. They've always like all the admin we've ever had are super transparent. They're not going to say just no. They're going to be like, oh, sorry, like no,
it's
or let me like
X,
get back
Y,
to you, and then it's because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Which is great. But yeah, just I feel like there's too much politics sometimes being admin, and like the issues I have to deal with are the things I don't like about like marking or like some of the disciplinary things with like in the classroom. I feel like as an admin, I'm going to see a lot more of the things that I don't maybe like, necessarily see, and get taken away from some of the stuff that does like bring me joy on a daily basis. So that might change. But like right now, like all the PD, like I don't have like an interest in doing like a master's of leadership really, but I do like of the last 2 years I like went to physics camp essentially.
That's the thing I wanted to ask you about, because literally this summer you went to a Chem PD session in Ontario. So what was that like? So
the year before I did physics camp, completely different.
Okay. So what's physics camp compared to the Chem conference?
So
physics camp just sounds fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so tiring.
Okay.
Is essentially like 10 hours a day of, okay, here's a complex physics topic. Here's a way to teach it. Let's do this way to teach it. Let's talk about it. Okay, another session, or we like listen to like some really smart people.
And where and when was this?
It was at the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo, Ontario.
Okay.
Like last 2022. Yeah.
Okay. And how long is this?
It was 1 week.
Okay.
4.5 days.
Yeah.
And it's all with all physics teachers from like all over the world who are all smarter than me. And and they did a really good job of like bringing in some new teachers and some experienced teachers, like made really good connections. We still have like a WhatsApp chat.
Cool.
Or like share like oh, there's this session you could try to apply to, or like so that was like intense because there's only 40 of you there. And then the conference I went to this summer was more like our like GETCA sessions, where there's like all these sessions that are going on, and there's no cap on how many people can go. You pay the conference fee and then you show up. And it was really good too. Like took a lot away from a couple things to like try in the future. And it was like, I haven't taught chem in a couple of years. So even though I have a chem degree, and especially with like COVID, not being able to do labs really during COVID online, like, oh, like here's a good idea for a lab. Here's a good idea for a demo.
You're kind of savoring the time a little bit more now that like you're not in COVID a little bit with the things that you can do with them. Yeah.
And breaking out of the routine of being like, so like
sit down, listen, take
notes. Cause it wasn't fun for anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it was good to like do that, to be okay, like here's some lab ideas, as opposed to like, what were those lab ideas again? Like, what was I doing?
Like you mentioned your mousetrap catapult thing.
Yeah.
What are some other, like first versus when you start versus doing this camp, what are some labs that you do now that you just love, you'll always do, and like versus like you didn't do them before? Like, are there any that kind of come to mind?
So for chemistry, like haven't had any chance to like do those ones yet. So ask me again next year.
Okay, but like, what are the what do you have in mind? Like, what are the ideas?
Good redox labs for grade 12 chemistry. There's a couple different ways there's a few activities for like gas laws I hadn't remembered or thought of for grade 11 chemistry, and then just a few demos like here and there, especially for redox, that like I was like, oh, that's a really interesting twist on that demo, or process of science. But in like physics, we do a lab now where we like determine Planck's constant with Play-Doh and LEDs and a voltmeter.
Okay.
Which is crazy.
You lost me there, but
so Planck's constant is a constant that helps define like the minimum amount of energy a photon has.
Okay.
And yeah, you just like use Play-Doh and LEDs and you can get data, and you can
actually
get Planck's constant.
I hate myself right now because when you said Play-Doh, I thought you were referring to like philosopher Play-Doh.
Oh.
And I
yeah, we use Play-Doh.
My internal
ancient Greek.
Well, I was like, I know Aristotle was like this mathematician, whatever. Yeah. So I didn't know if there's like some weird Plato principle. I hate myself. It's fine.
But that's one that I've like introduced that I've had like a lot of success with. And then this semester, there's a couple more that I'm going to try. But yeah, it's definitely overwhelming the amount of stuff like you learn at some of those PD sessions. And it
is like a lot.
They tell you it's like not reasonable to think that you can add it all at once.
Yeah, because like there will be still those days when there are notes, you still do the talking. It's like they're not going to be a lab every single day. You'll kill yourself planning and prepping. And
if you try to do too much at once, the quality, you don't get any learning. Like there's problems, or like if you didn't think about it enough and plan around it enough, you're going to go in and the kids don't come out with anything that you intended.
Yeah, it's almost like there's too much chaos in a way. So how many labs would you do in a semester?
Try to do one per unit for sure.
Okay. Units probably 3, 4, 5-ish. I have no idea.
So science is all broken down into 4 units. So you end up doing like, we try to do like 4 labs.
Okay.
We're like 1 lab per unit. Some units lend themselves better to labs than others. But definitely, if I could do more, I would. But
again, but honestly, if you can do these sessions, do that stuff. Because honestly, now you've kind of intrigued me a little bit, because I was told last year about the National Social Studies Conference every year. It's in the US, so it's like super expensive. You have to fly, you have to get hotels, the conference fee is like $500. But again, that's just a conference. I wonder if there would be like a camp of some sort, more social studies related, that I'm just not aware of at this point. So that's something I will look into a bit more. What would students be surprised to find out about you?
Honestly, I don't think I'm like so transparent about everything. I like don't know what the answer to that would be.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a pretty fascinating question when I kind of came across it, but I have one last thing for you, Mr. Wickens.
What would students be surprised to find out about you?
No. I don't know. Actually, maybe I should have thought about that question a little bit more. But I do have one last thing for you, though. I heard a quote one time. I thought it was really good, and I want your perspective on it. Education is what remains once we forget everything that we learned in school. What are some of the values that you want, or attitudes that you want students to take away from their time with you? So I've had a few saying like learning shouldn't be intimidating, or don't take things at face value. Like, what are some things that you think are things like, just from you being the physics teacher versus me being their teacher? Like, what is it that like you want them to really take away from their experience with you?
Make it fun, for sure, is one. Like, failure's fine, but learn from it. Like that reflection process.
Like, there is a valuable reason for failure. Don't just keep failing without reflecting, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's like insanity. Like,
right? It's literally insane.
And then probably the last one, I'm just trying to think of a way to like word it concisely, would be, it comes back to like that scientific, like critical thinking like process,
curiosity,
like that curiosity, like keep like ask questions. But yeah, those like 3 things. Probably like number 1, like try to make it fun, like, and then number 2, it's like fail, but in a
fail and reflect.
Don't be afraid to try. I don't know. There's like all those like
really some cliche stuff, but that's fine. But like stuff. But honestly,
trying to like break it down into a couple words.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Do you have anything different that you would want to add?
I'm kind of in the same boat of like, don't take it too seriously. Like, again, like not just education, but if you're still alive, keep going. Like and honestly, another thing I always say is, don't be afraid to tell people what you want and go for what you want. It's kind of my other main things. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Wickens. Appreciate you.
You did a really good job of not letting me ask you questions. I came in here being like, oh, I'm going to turn the tables.
Hey, well, you know what? Because Hugh and I had on, he turned a lot of questions back on me. But again, feel free. Do you have any questions for me that you want to ask for? We don't have to do, we can do another one later on. But are there anything that because again, well, I guess I don't avoid being asked questions, but I almost find, again, maybe that's a little bit of my imposter brain kind of clicking around of I'm still so new that I don't really know what potential insight I could give someone. It's more so like myself kind of inquiring through other people. But do you have a question for me? Or
so as a new 2 years in, you've hopefully you've also, yeah, I know you've reflected and stuff.
Yeah,
you've changed lots of stuff.
It's almost all I do.
What's the number one thing you think you've changed in how you your practice of teaching that's been beneficial in your first year?
Having the students do the talking. I've found, especially in social, it's very, because essentially literally my whole university undergrad would have been you go to a lecture, it's 50 minutes. And one hole I found in university, especially in trying to meet people, was when we would do a discussion, essentially kind of like high school, if there's no seating plan, you kind of go to the same seat every day. It was always, that's what you do. So one of the things that I've changed is that I always start my first week of every course with some sort of reading, regardless of whether or not it's -1, -2. And essentially, I put the students into groups. So I say, I'll give you 15, 20 minutes to read through this article. The article will be maybe 3-4 pages. I fine tooth comb it and I put in bold everything I actually kind of want them to take away. So at least they read that part. I have a series of questions. It's usually formative. I don't take it as an actual performance marks. We're kind of just getting our feet wet. But essentially, I'll put them into 4 or 5 groups. And then I'll put 5 people in each group, let's just say. So if I have the downward group, okay, get into these groups and do your discussion. That way now they're kind of forced to meet new people, but you're kind of breaking the ice for them by giving them something to actually talk about. Because I also find that it's important to know, right now I teach 20-1 social, block 3, and I teach 20-1 social, block 4. They are night and day differences in terms of the classroom culture, the classroom engagement, and the types of students that you'll actually see. One class does not stop talking. One class is nails on a chalkboard, I guess silent in terms of actually trying to engage them. So, but then almost I find with that class, then it's okay to do a little bit more lecturing because it's just not quite in them. Or maybe I won't find as many activities because they just don't like that. You know what I mean? So, and they'll actually, I have some students who'll say, Mr. Clark, I just want to come in here and take notes. Why do you keep making us do the stuff to talk to each other? I don't want to do that. So again, that's one thing. So I guess my going down the rabbit hole of having the 5 people in one group, essentially what I say is now that I have 5 groups on the board, there's essentially names right here and there's names across. So there's names going down and across. Then I put a circle through the horizontal group. And I'm now this is your new group of 5. So that literally kind of forces the student to almost talk to at least 10 new people. And everyone is in a different group from where they started. So you're kind of taking away the awkwardness a little bit is what I find. Because I almost find it's with social specifically, in the curriculum, there's almost no controversial material, and there's nothing controversial embedded in the required content. Now there's almost what's the word I'm looking for? It's when they give the description of the curriculum at the beginning, it's is it the face matter? Is it anyway,
I know what you mean.
It's essentially considered in that it's implied that you will eventually talk about current events and controversial issues. But I find if you don't have any degree of comfort in your class first, it makes talking about controversial topics, ineffective. Because everyone's still so uncomfortable. They're not really willing to take a risk yet. So that's kind of one thing. And then two is trying to find ways to get students out of their desks. So like this past week, again, just moving to year 2 now, I'm starting to teach these courses a couple times. With diploma courses, unfortunately, like the standardized test, it's almost very much, I need to relay these case studies to you. So we need to just figure this out. But yeah, so I find the readings help to kind of get into it, get the class comfortable, kind of reading your class culture, knowing that you probably will have a pretty similar lesson plan, but you can't be afraid to change it up as you go. Like what I did for block 3, you might have an idea during block 3 what to do for block 4. And it's totally okay to just be more go with the flow, which is kind of what I am. But the second thing is I'm way too chill. I don't know how to navigate. It's not even that I want to be like cool or their friend. I just don't really have a disciplinary bone. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure that out and trying to make it a bit more and be a bit more assertive and try and have some more classroom norms. Because again, it's almost like doing those readings and stuff at the beginning. I kind of keep the beginning chill, but that chillness is kind of for a reason to make them actually want to come to class. So what do you think about that?
So like to me, the readings is definitely something like when you first started talking about it, I thought it was because it makes them do more work and you have to do it's more work up front to like get that stuff organized, but then they actually get a lot more out of it and you have to do less. Like you
during
can
the actual class time
things like getting critical thinking out of them because they're doing
it's a critical thinking article. Yeah. And that's literally because one of the things, like you say, you try to embed critical thinking and problem solving in your classes. Essentially, the root of why social studies even exists as a topic to be taught is the goal of students thinking critically and reflecting on their place in society, right? So there's literally, every time I do this critical thinking article, I've modified it a few times, but every single time I've done it, there's at least 3 or 4 students who will say, I didn't even know what critical thinking was before this. Like you have 30-1 social, and they'll say, I've never actually thought about what it actually means to think critically. Like, is it a skill? Is it an attitude? Is it a value? Is it something that you need to make a habit of? That's kind of the thinking I kind of want them to get involved in. And then I always relate back to that article now that I started doing that. Whenever we'll go through any crash course video and I'll pause it and I'll be like, how does he know that? And we'll kind of go through, okay, he probably has like a certain source base that he builds for his video. And then he has to go through this process for breaking down sources, et cetera, to make sure it's authentic and accurate. Whereas before, you essentially would have just accepted whatever you saw for what it was. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the face value thing that I like as well. And yeah, that's kind of my thing and been my main battle, I would say, is trying to not be too chill so that the students don't see it as a place to just come and waste time, but also being chill enough that they still enjoy coming to my class and can actually learn something. But yeah,
I would say I had to learn the not chillness factor. I think
COVID. How long do you think that took? Like, are you still kind of in it, or do you feel like you're getting better at it?
I think I'm like, I found a good balance of the like seriousness that needs to be in the classroom, but also the chillness. And that part of it just came from realizing, like, the first year when you're teaching, like when I was teaching the first year, like I still wanted them to like think but when they asked me a question, I would just like answer it. And then kind of realizing that isn't doing them any good at the end of the day. If it's not a good question, like, how do I do this? Oh, you just do this. Like, oh, it's like, this is the equation. This is how you do this question.
Getting them to take some autonomy a little bit.
Yeah. Like, how do you do this? Well, did you draw, like, for physics or chemistry? Did you write down, like, what's the question asking you to find? Did you write down that? Yeah. If physics question, did you draw a diagram? No, we'll go do that and then come back and ask me. Like
getting the students to model their learning for themselves. So how would you talk about
doing the work and I'm not doing the work for them, essentially?
Because that's a big thing I've noticed too, is how much of their learning is our responsibility? Obviously, a significant amount,
and
because
learning how to learn is our responsibility.
Yeah. Essentially, regardless of your topic, you're trying to get them to buy into the fact that learning is valuable. And that is across every subject. And if you don't have that skill, you won't do well in any subject. So how would you find that? Because I guess that wouldn't be my definition of what chill is, because you said that you're a little bit more of the gradual release of responsibility in terms of getting them to actually take account for their own questions, to attempt to answer it for themselves first before coming to you. But I guess my example of chill is, if we have a work block, it doesn't matter as much. Like, if they choose to waste their own time, that's on them.
But that's so, like, you're teaching grade 11s and 12.
Yeah.
So I would also say, like, if we have a work block, we will have a whole work block once in a while. We just don't have enough time to do that.
Yeah.
But as, like, I'm trying to facilitate the work block for them. So, like,
yes.
And that's, like, something that sucked during COVID, because, like, circulating around the classroom and, like,
that's where your relationships are built too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, like, that kind of went away during COVID. So it's been great to have it back.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, if you're, like, going around the classroom during a work block or work time, let's just call it work time.
Yep.
And the student is on their phone or socializing or doing something, you'd be like, is this a valuable use of your time right now? Like, and if they say, I'm going to do it at home, then you're like, okay, you're accountable for this, because if you don't do it at home, you're not going to be successful. And, like, you're probably in this class, like if it's a -1 class or like science classes, because you need it to go somewhere.
You usually need
it for the next step, right?
Yeah.
So that's your motivation for learning this topic, hopefully. And hopefully it's interesting. Hopefully there's a bit of intrinsic, or we provide enough to make it, like, intrinsically interesting. I don't know.
Well, so I guess how do you kind of manage your classes differently versus, like, an academic physics 30 class versus maybe like a science 24 or a science 30?
Teach. I taught science 30. I've never taught science.
So you've always had mostly academic
taught
kids.
Science 10 since
Okay.
But so science 20, science 30 is a good example, because those students,
there's, like, more the general. It's kind of like you have to take a science, so you'll take that one.
Yeah. So I would say I take some of the onus off of them to do some of the work that I would expect to be done in one of the core sciences.
Well, that's interesting, because, like, everyone has to take social. Like, not everyone has to take physics 30. So that's an interesting difference in terms of the willingness of the students, or the willfulness of the students, right? So I almost find, like, right now, I haven't really ever taught grade 10. It's only been grade 11 and 12 so far since I started. And with my grade 10 specifically, like, I almost find it's hard to manage them, because I essentially kind of put the same expectations as I would for my 30-1. But I'm also, so this past week, I always cringe when I hear students say this, but they always say, this is my favorite class. Well, and I'm always like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It's like, well, does that mean I'm not teaching you anything? Because now this is just a place for you to do things at your own pace. But I also understand for some of these kids, this might, getting into kind of more sentimental kind of mental health lane, this might be the only place they're comfortable. You know what I mean? So it's like, how much do you want to start being the dick teacher who's, like, yelling and scolding all the time, versus you've told me that you've enjoyed coming to social? That to me is almost like trying to instill enjoying school in some sense. So I guess that's kind of been my battle of how less chill do I want to be? You know what I mean? Like, if it's, again, we measure ourselves on our diploma results, and each semester I've taught social 30-1 and 30-2. I've always been within plus minus 1% of the provincial average for my classes. So again, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a pat on the back for myself, or I don't know, but it's just, clearly it's not 10% below the provincial average. You know what I mean? So it's like, I must be doing something. But again, I do realize and acknowledge myself, there are times where it's like, okay, maybe I am being too chill. But anyway, that's kind of been my...
If you're getting the results though, like
well, yeah,
maybe
like,
you're not being too chill.
Yeah, maybe I am actually like a bit more, because my one main thing is if I'm talking and it's instruction, there's no headphones, there's no phones.
Yeah.
Like that's
just mutual respect, right?
Yes. And so that's kind of my main thing of, I literally say at the beginning, if you just are present, even if you don't take notes, if you're just looking at me or involved in some capacity during any sort of discussion, you will succeed. Like it's when you put both headphones in and go on your phone and watch TikTok while I'm talking, well, then you're just not going to grasp anything. So why are you even here? So that's kind of been because I guess first semester, like when I first started teaching for like a 2-month temp gig here, but like a couple years ago when a teacher here tore her Achilles and I had the May and June, my 20-2 class, I remember specifically, I was like, you guys do you, man. Like I was trying to figure it out. I was surviving, just trying to get from day to day. And I was like, you being on your phone right now is the least of my concerns, especially while I was talking. So I was like, you know what? I'm just trying to figure this content out. So, but that has changed.
Yeah. So that's a like less chill.
That's less chill, but you're not being the teacher that you don't want to be. Yeah. And you're not being a fake version of yourself to present to your students. But yeah. All right, sir. Wrap it up.
That was
great.
We tried to wrap it up earlier.
No, that's all right. No, I love it.
We went on a tangent. It was good.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Hello again, everyone. Just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this conversation, and hopefully you enjoyed the conversation just as much as I did. If there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or something you would like to contribute to the show, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @mrclark.afterdark. Hope you enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you next time, unless you're scared.